There is a cost sitting quietly inside almost every career decision you make. It does not show up on your paycheck. It does not appear in the budget. It does not appear in the forecast, nor is it listed in your performance review. Nobody puts it into a spreadsheet. Nobody assigns it a line item. Nobody walks into a leadership meeting and says, we need to calculate the cost of how long we have been sitting in the gray. And yet, that may be the most expensive cost you are paying. The opportunity cost of saying where you are too long. The opportunity cost of confusing familiarity with security. The opportunity cost of continuing to carry what you have already outgrown. The opportunity cost of saying yes because you are afraid of what might happen if you say no. The opportunity cost of being so focused on proving your value that you never create enough space to expand it. And perhaps most dangerously, the opportunity cost of calling something success simply because it has not failed yet. And that is what we're talking about today. The false security, the gray area, the leadership bottlenecks that growth eventually exposes, and the decision you already know you need to make. Welcome back to Holding the Room, Leadership, AI, and the Human Edge. I'm Melissa Sierra, and today's episode is called The Opportunity Cost That Nobody Calculates. Let's get into it. The half-year moment that we're going to examine. We're halfway through the year, and I know that can sound like a simple calendar observation, but I want you to treat it as something more. I want you to treat it as a decision point, because there's something about the midpoint of a year that removes the luxury of pretending. In January, we talk about possibility. We set intentions. We make plans. We imagine what could change. But by the middle of the year, patterns have become visible. You know what you have prioritized. You know what you have already avoided. You know which conversations you keep postponing. You know where your energy is going today. You know which goals are receiving your time and which ones are surviving only as ideas. You know what's working. You also know what you keep trying to convince yourself is working. That distinction matters. The midpoint is not a moment for shame. It's a moment for truth. You do not need to punish yourself for what has not happened. You do need, though, to become honest about what will not happen if nothing changes. That is the invitation in our episode today. To stop measuring the year only by what you have completed and begin measuring it by what you're still tolerating. What ambiguity are you still sitting in? What decision have you left open? What commitment have you outgrown? What version of success are you continuing to pursue simply because it once made sense? Being decisive in this moment may be the greatest gift you give yourself for the remainder of the year. Not more effort, not more activity, not another complicated plan. A decision. Because a decision closes one path so your energy can finally move toward another. And many of us are exhausted, not because we are doing too much, but because we are trying to emotionally maintain too many possible futures at once. False security is still a risk. One of the most dangerous things in a career, a business, or a leadership role is false security. False security sounds like, at least I know what I have here. It may not be perfect, but it's stable. I should probably wait until things settle down. I have invested too much to change direction now. I am too important to step away. This isn't the ideal time. I will revisit it after the next quarter. False security is seductive because it does not ask you to take an immediate risk. It allows you to stay familiar, too familiar. And the familiar can feel safe even when it's slowly diminishing you. But familiarity is not security. Being needed is not security. A title is not security. A paycheck is not security. A large client, not security. Nor is a full pipeline. Nor is a long tenure. A company's promise, not security. A leader's reassurance, not security. Even success itself is not always security, because success can become fragile when it depends on conditions you do not control. The market changes, leadership changes, technology changes, the client changes direction, the funding shifts, the organization restructures. The role that once seemed essential is suddenly reconsidered. This does not mean we should live in fear. It means we should stop building our confidence on borrowed stability. Real security is not the guarantee that nothing will change. Real security is your ability to create value, relationships, relevance, and opportunity when it does. That is a very different definition. False security says, I am safe because the environment still needs me. Real security says, I trust myself to create the next opportunity, even if this environment changes. False security says, I should stay because I know how this system works. Real security says, I have built capabilities that can work in more than one system. False security says, I cannot leave because too much depends on me. Real security says, if everything depends on me, then maybe evidence of a leadership bottleneck. That last one is uncomfortable, but we need to talk about it. Growth exposes leadership bottlenecks. Growth has a way of exposing whatever leadership has avoided. When a team is small, unclear roles can survive. When a company is moving slowly, inefficient decisions can hide. When there are only a few clients, one strong operator can hold everything together. When the pressure is manageable, weak communication may not appear catastrophic, but growth magnifies what is underneath. More clients expose broken processes. More revenue exposes weak financial discipline. More people expose inconsistent leadership. More opportunity exposes poor prioritization. More visibility exposes unclear positioning. More responsibility exposes a leader's inability to delegate. More complexity exposes whether trust actually exists. Growth does not always create the problem. Sometimes growth simply removes the cover. That is why a business can say it wants to scale, but resist every behavior scaling requires. It wants more revenue, but doesn't want to change the decision-making structure. It wants stronger leaders, but keeps the authority concentrated at the top. It wants innovation, but punishes experimentation. It wants ownership, but steps in every time someone approaches a problem differently. It wants speed, but requires 12 people to approve a decision. It wants succession, but never gives emerging leaders enough space to lead. Growth eventually confronts leadership with a choice. Do you want to remain at the center of everything? Or do you want to build something capable of growing beyond you? You cannot always have both. And this applies to individual careers too. You may say you want a bigger role, but are you still making yourself necessary for every detail? You may say you want to become more strategic, but are you continuing to solve every operational problem before anyone else feels the consequences? You may say you want your team to step up, but do you allow them to struggle long enough to develop judgment? You may say you want more opportunity, but is your current identity built around being the person nobody can operate without? Growth exposes this tension. The strength that got you here can become the bottleneck that prevents the next level. Your ability to solve everything, your need for control, your speed, your perfectionism, your expertise, your high standards, your willingness to absorb, your instinct to protect. These are not bad qualities, but unexamined strengths often become constraints. And sometimes the opportunity cost nobody calculates is the cost of a leader refusing to evolve beyond the behavior that originally made them successful to begin with. Recovering addict right here. The indispensability trap. High performers are especially vulnerable to this. Once you develop a reputation for being the person who can handle anything, more things are handed to you. At first, this feels like trust. It feels like recognition. It feels like momentum. People seek your opinion. You are invited into many more meetings. You become the person who understands the history, the personalities, the clients, the politics, the unwritten rules, and the systems nobody fully documented. Before long, you are not simply doing your job anymore. You're holding together the infrastructure around the job. You are translating between teams. You are calming people down. You are filling leadership gaps. You're mentoring without formal recognition. You're preventing problems nobody will ever know almost happened. You're absorbing uncertainty. You're protecting other people from consequences. You're making the organization look more stable than it actually is. You become that shock absorber. And because you're so good at absorbing the impact, people stop noticing that the road is broken. That indispensability trap is what we just examined. The organization benefits from your ability to survive dysfunction, but you may not benefit from continuing to demonstrate it. There is a point in which resilience becomes subsidization. You are no longer simply contributing. You are subsidizing unclear leadership. You're subsidizing weak systems. You're subsidizing poor prioritization. You're subsidizing underdeveloped talent. You're subsidizing decisions other people are avoiding. And the payment is your time, your energy, your creativity, your health, your confidence, your marketability, your future. But nobody calculates that cost. Instead, they tell you how important you are. They tell you that the team needs you. They tell you nobody understands the business like you do. They tell you this is not the right time to step away. They ask you to get through one more quarter, one more launch, one more review, one more reorganization, one more leadership transition. And somehow, just a few more months becomes another year. This is how opportunity cost compounds. Not through one dramatic mistake, through small decisions that repeatedly prioritize immediate usefulness over long-term growth. The gray area is not neutral. There is a particular place many ambitious people spend too much time. The gray area. Not fully committed, not fully gone, not satisfied, not moving, not saying yes, not saying no, not trusting the current situation, not creating a new one. The gray area can look responsible because you're not making a reckless decision. But indecision is still a decision. The gray area is not neutral. It consumes emotional energy. It divides your attention. It weakens your conviction. It keeps you constantly interpreting instead of acting. You begin every week wondering whether something will change. You read into every meeting, every email, every shift in tone, every new leader, every organizational announcement, every client conversation. You search for evidence that staying is the right choice. Then you search for evidence that leaving is. This is exhausting because you're living in two realities. The one you currently have and the one you keep imagining. At some point, you have to stop asking the gray area to give you clarity. The gray area cannot always give you clarity because the gray area often exists to protect you from making the decision clarity requires. Sometimes you already know enough. You may not exactly know what will happen next, but you know how the current situation feels. You know what pattern continues. You know what promises have not become behavior. You know which parts of yourself you keep minimizing. You know where your growth has stalled. You know what you would tell someone else if the same situation was happening to them. The question is not always, do I have enough information? Sometimes the question is, how much longer am I willing to avoid acting on the information I already have? You do not need 100% certainty. You need enough conviction to take the honest next step. I want to look at redefining success. This brings me to the deeper challenge I want to make every person listening this week. You have to redefine success, not because accomplishment doesn't matter, not because titles do not matter, not because money, recognition, authority, or advancement are meaningless. They all matter, but they're incomplete. Too many people inherit a definition of success they never consciously chose. The next promotion, the bigger title, the larger team, the more recognizable company, the executive office, the compensation level, the external proof. And then one day they reach it and discover that achievement did not answer the deeper questions. Who did I become? Who did I help become more capable? What changed because I was here? What did I build that will continue without me? Did my leadership create more opportunity for other people? Did I make the system better, or did I simply become better at surviving it? Did I use my success to increase my title or to increase my impact? That is where legacy enters the conversation. And I want to be very clear. Legacy is not something you begin thinking about at the end of your career. Legacy is not reserved for CEOs. It's not reserved for founders. And it's not reserved for people with larger platforms. And it's certainly not reserved for people with decades of experience. Legacy and impact can be created at any age, at any title, inside any company, and across any vertical. You create legacy when you can change the way someone sees themselves. You create legacy when you build a system that makes other people more successful. You create legacy when you challenge a norm that no longer serves the organization. You create legacy when you advocate for someone whose work has gone unseen. You create legacy when you tell the truth in a room that rewards silence. You create legacy when your leadership increases the capacity of others. You create legacy when your ideas outlive the meeting where you introduce them. You create legacy when you make an environment more intelligent, more humane, honest, courageous, or effective because you were in it. A manager can create legacy. An individual contributor can create legacy. A new employee can create legacy. A founder can create legacy. A person changing careers at 50 can create legacy. A person beginning at 25 can also create legacy. Impact does not wait for permission from your title, and it does not require you to stay in one company, one industry, or one professional identity forever. The real question: are you using your current position to create more possibility for yourself, for the people around you, for the work, for the next generation of leadership? That is more meaningful definition of success. Not simply what you accumulate, what you activate. The 4 opportunity costs. There are 4 types of opportunity costs that high performers often fail to calculate. The cost of attention, the cost of identity, the cost of visibility, and the cost of delayed experimentation. Let's talk about the first one, the cost of attention. Your attention is one of the most valuable strategic assets you have, but most people treat it like an unlimited public utility. Anyone can access it. Any meeting can claim it. Any problem can interrupt it. Any request can redirect it. High performers often wear this as a badge of honor. They're available. They're responsive. They're fast, flexible, capable of handling competing priorities. But fragmented attention prevents depth. It prevents strategic reflection. It prevents original thinking. It prevents you from noticing that the life you're maintaining may no longer match the future you want. You cannot design a new chapter while constantly reacting to the current one. You cannot hear your own ambition clearly when your mind is filled with everyone else's urgency. You cannot build visibility, create intellectual property, develop relationships, or test ideas when every spare hour is spent catching up. Opportunity is often created in the margin, in the conversation that did not have an immediate purpose, in the hour you spent thinking rather than responding, in the idea you followed before you even knew where it was going to lead, in the relationship you nurtured before you even know you needed anything, in the experiment that was not attached to a guaranteed result. When you eliminate all margin, you eliminate the conditions in which opportunity can emerge. That's why an overbooked calendar is not simply a productivity problem. It's a strategic risk. If every meaningful hour belongs to your current obligations, your future is being funded with leftovers. And leftovers rarely produce transformation. Number 2, the cost of identity. The longer you perform a role, the easier it becomes to confuse the role with who you are. You are no longer simply doing the work. You become the person who does the work. The expert, the fixer, the steady hand, the person who does not need support, the person who always figures it out. Identity matters because it shapes what you believe you are and what you're allowed to do next. If your identity is built around competence, you may resist becoming a beginner. If it's built around certainty, you may avoid experimentation. If it's built around being the strongest person in the room, you may avoid asking for help. If it's built around being indispensable, you may unconsciously prevent other people from becoming capable. Because delegation threatens the identity. What happens if someone else can do it? What happens if the team no longer needs you for every decision? What happens if your value cannot be proven through volume? Growth often requires the release of an identity that once protected you. The tireless worker, the loyal lieutenant, the invisible force behind the results, the person who never drops the ball. You don't have to abandon your strengths, but you may need to stop allowing them to define the boundaries of your future. Sometimes your willingness to keep saving the system is the reason the system never improves. Sometimes your willingness to keep carrying the weight is the reason nobody realizes it needs to be redistributed. Number 3, the cost of invisibility. Not performative visibility, strategic visibility. The ability for others to understand what you know, how you think, what you stand for, and what kind of problems you're equipped to solve. High performers often believe good work speaks for itself, but good work is often a terrible publicist. It gets absorbed into the team results. It gets summarized on a slide. It becomes a metric. It becomes expected. And over time, the extraordinary becomes operationally invisible. You're producing, but are you building a reputation? You're delivering, but are you creating a point of view for yourself? You're solving complex problems, but are you translating those solutions into language others can remember? Opportunity often moves through language. Someone says your name in a room. Someone describes your perspective. Someone remembers how you handled a difficult moment. Someone understands the category of the problem you solve. But that only happens when your contribution becomes legible. People cannot advocate for what they cannot articulate. And if you remain buried in your execution, your value may be oblivious to those closest to the work. Your name needs to echo in rooms you're not in. Not because you need constant recognition, because opportunity is often distributed in conversations you do not know are happening. The fourth opportunity cost, the cost of delaying experimentation. Waiting until the perfect timing. Waiting until the organization settles down. Waiting until you have more confidence, more certainty, more credentials, more permission, more time. The problem is that clarity often comes from movement. You do not think your way into every answer. Some answers require contact with reality. You have to test the idea, have the conversation, make the offer, write the article, apply for the opportunity, ask for the introduction, record the episode, build the prototype. You have to create data. High performers often delay experimentation because they're accustomed to looking competent. Experimentation requires you to be publicly unfinished. It requires you to risk doing something that may not work. But the cost of waiting is not neutral. While you're waiting, someone else is learning. Someone else is building relationships. Someone else is becoming associated with the idea. Someone else is creating evidence, and you're still preparing. Preparation matters, don't get me wrong, but endless preparation is often fear wearing business casual clothes. At some point, the responsible decision is to simply move. And that's why I created the opportunity flywheel. Because opportunity is not something we should only wait to receive. Opportunity can be designed. It can be cultivated. It can be created through 5 interconnected forces: strategy, visibility, relationships, execution, results. Strategy gives your effort direction. Visibility helps others understand your value and your perspective. Relationships increase access, trust, insight, and advocacy. Execution turns intention into evidence, and results create credibility and momentum. Then the wheel continues. Results strengthen visibility. Visibility attract relationships. Relationships create new strategic insight. Strategy sharpens execution. Execution creates stronger results. But here's what stops the flywheel: overinvestment in execution. Many high performers live almost entirely in execution. They work, they deliver, they solve, they respond, they achieve. But they do not create a strategy that points those results toward a bigger future. They do not build visibility around what the results actually mean. They don't invest in relationships that can carry those results into new rooms. They do not capture the lessons in a way that can be repeated. So the wheel doesn't turn. It becomes a treadmill, a very impressive treadmill, a treadmill with awards, with bonuses, with strong performance reviews. But still, a treadmill. The opportunity flywheel is not about doing more. It is about ensuring that what you do compounds. The 5 to focus on. This is a segment I want to bring into every episode moving forward, and I call it the 5 to focus on. These are 5 actions aligned to the opportunity flywheel that you can use to turn the episode into movement for yourself. For this episode, the focus is reducing the hidden opportunity cost of indecision, false security, and overextension. Number 1, strategy. Name the decision. Identify the decision you have been keeping in the gray. Do not begin with a 10-page plan. Name the decision. Is it whether to remain in a role? Whether to have a conversation? Whether to stop carrying a responsibility? Whether to test a new business idea? Whether to reposition yourself? Whether to ask for more? Whether to walk away? Write the decision in 1 sentence. Clarity begins when ambiguity becomes language. Number 2, visibility. Make your next level value legible. Ask yourself whether people can clearly understand the value you want to be known for next. Not only what you have done, what you're prepared to do. Share 1 perspective. Document 1 framework. Speak about 1 lesson. Translate 1 result into a story that demonstrates how you think. Do not leave your value trapped inside the work. Number 3, relationships. Have the conversation you keep delaying, Opportunity rarely develops in isolation. Identify 1 person who can offer insight, challenge, access, perspective, or honest feedback, not someone who will simply tell you whatever it is you want to hear. Have the real conversation. Ask the question you've been avoiding. Tell them where you're trying to go. Let the relationship create information you cannot generate alone. Number 4, execution. Make 1 reallocation. Remove or reduce 1 commitment that no longer deserves its cost. Delegate it, decline it, shorten it, renegotiate it, stop attending it, protect 1 hour, create 1 boundary. Take 1 concrete action that proves your future is no longer being funded with only leftovers. 5, results. Define success beyond completion. Do not measure the next 6 months on how you will finish. Measure whether your choices increase your capacity, impact, visibility, relationships, and the ability to create opportunity. Ask, what became possible because I made this decision? Who became stronger because of my leadership? What did I build that can continue beyond my direct involvement? What did I stop tolerating? How did I move from maintenance to momentum? Those are results too, and they may be more important than any other completed task. The difference between work and leverage. Work produces an outcome. Leverage allows that outcome to continue producing value after the task is finished. You led a transformation. That's work. You converted what you learned into a framework others can use. That's leverage. You solved a major customer problem. It's work. You created a case study, sharpened your positioning, and built a perspective around why the problem occurred. That is leverage. You guided a team through uncertainty. That's work. You built leaders who can guide the next difficult period without your constant intervention. That is leadership. High performers create enormous value, but often fail to capture it. They leave the insight trapped inside the experience. They move directly into the next crisis. They do not pause long enough to ask, what did this teach me? What patterns did I notice? What language can I create around it moving forward? What does this reveal about the leader that I'm becoming? How can this experience create more opportunity? Without reflection, experience remains labor. Without reflection, experience becomes intellectual property. This is one of the central principles of living in a leadership laboratory. Your life is not simply happening to you. Every experience is data. Every difficult conversation is data. Every moment of resistance is data. Every organizational pattern is data. Every success and every disappointment is data. But data only becomes intelligence when you choose to examine it. And intelligence only becomes opportunity when you use it. The opportunity cost audit. I want you to conduct the opportunity cost audit this week. Create 4 columns. In the first, write, what am I currently saying yes to? Include reoccurring meetings, responsibilities, projects, emotional labor, informal support, habits, and the things you inherited because you never explicitly refused them. In the second column, I want you to write, what does this yes require from me? Time, attention, preparation, travel, emotional energy, political capital, recovery time. Calculate the full cost. A 1-hour meeting that requires 2 hours of preparation and leaves you frustrated for the rest of the day is not a 1-hour commitment. In the third column, I want you to write, what is this yes preventing? Strategic thinking, visibility, learning, rest, your health, relationship building, experimentation, a conversation, a decision, a version of yourself you keep postponing. And then in the last and fourth column, write, does this commitment still deserve its cost? Not, is this useful? Not, can I do it? Not, will someone be disappointed? Does it deserve cost? That's a different standard. Many things are useful. Many things could benefit from your attention. But usefulness alone does not justify continued investment on your part. The 3 types of yes. Sort your commitments into 3 categories. The first is the strategic yes. This moves your opportunity flywheel. It develops a relevant capability, strengthens your reputation, deepens an important relationship, produces a result connected to your future. The second is the maintenance yes. This keeps the system running. Maintenance isn't bad, but too much maintenance leaves no room for your own growth. The third is the fear-based yes. This exists because you're afraid of what will happen if you say no. You're afraid people will think you're not committed, afraid the work will not be done correctly, afraid someone else will gain visibility, afraid of conflict, afraid of being replaced, afraid of losing control, afraid of what you might discover if you finally create space. Fear-based yeses are expensive because they preserve the exact conditions you say you want to change. You cannot create a different future while repeatedly voting for the current one. Every time you say yes is a vote. Every hour is an investment. Every commitment strengthens one path at the expense of another. What future are you currently funding? Here's the question that I want you to sit with. Not the future you say you want, not the future on your vision board. What future are your current choices funding? If you want to become an industry authority, are you funding the writing, thinking, relationships, and visibility required? If you want a strategic role, are you creating evidence that you think beyond your current function? You want to start a business. Are you speaking to potential customers? If you want more influence, are you learning how decisions are made outside your immediate circle? If you want more freedom, are you reducing dependency on your direct involvement? If you want greater impact, are you building something that can outlast your participation? Your future does not respond to your intention alone. It responds to your allocation. Time allocated, attention allocated, energy allocated, money, courage, all these allocations. Opportunity follows what you consistently resource. The fear of free space. One reason people resist reducing commitments is that free space can be terrifying. Busyness provides an identity. It gives you evidence that you matter. It protects you from bigger questions. When the calendar is full, you do not have to ask whether you still want the life it represents. When everyone needs you, you do not have to ask what you need. When you're constantly responding, you do not have to decide what you would choose without the pressure. Creating space may initially feel uncomfortable. The quiet becomes loud. You notice dissatisfaction that urgency helped you suppress. You realize you may have outgrown a role, business model, relationship, leadership style, or definition of success. But discomfort does not mean the decision was wrong. It may mean you finally have enough room to hear yourself. Space is not emptiness. Space is capacity. Capacity to think, to create, to build, to recover, to reorganize opportunity when it appears. Your next level may require you to withdraw. Sometimes growth requires addition, new skills, new relationships, new habits, new experiences. But sometimes growth requires withdrawal. You withdraw energy from work that no longer deserves your highest involvement. You withdraw attention from problems that belong to someone else. You withdraw your identity from an environment that only values an older version of you. You withdraw from the need to prove yourself through exhaustion. This is not abandonment, it's reallocation. You're not becoming less committed. You are becoming more discerning. You're not refusing to lead. You are redefining what leadership is. Leadership is not how much you can carry. Leadership is what becomes possible because of how you carry it. Leadership is not being required for every single decision. It's creating the capacity for better decisions to happen without you. Leadership is not simply achieving the result. It is increasing the ability of others to create results too. That's impact. That's legacy. That's success worth redefining. And now, let's do a closing challenge. We're halfway through the year. And I do not want you to use that as a reason to panic. I want you to use it as a permission to decide. You do not have to carry the uncertainty for another 6 months. You don't have to wait for another reorganization, another promise, another review, another external sign, another perfect moment. You can decide what the remainder of your year will represent. Not necessarily by making one dramatic move, but by refusing to remain unconscious. Name the gray area. Calculate what it's costing you. Identify the false security. Recognize the bottleneck. Redefine success. Choose one honest next step. Because decisiveness does not require knowing every part of the path. It requires being unwilling to continue betraying what you already know. And remember, legacy is not something you create one day. Legacy is being built in the choices you are making right now, in how you lead, in what you will tolerate, in what you teach, in what you challenge, in who becomes more capable because simply you were there, in whether your success creates more opportunity for anyone beyond you. That is the charge. Do not simply ask, how successful can I become? I want you to ask yourself, what can become possible because I chose to lead differently? I want to thank you for joining me this episode of Holding the Room, Leadership, AI, and the Human Edge. If this episode made you think about a decision you've been postponing, do not let that realization disappear when this episode ends. Write it down, name the cost, choose the next step, and share this episode with someone who may be mistaking familiarity for security or busyness for progress. Follow or subscribe so you do not miss our next conversation. Until next time, remember, you do not have to wait for a bigger title to create impact. You do not have to wait for the perfect company to build legacy. You do not have to wait for certainty to move out of the gray area. Hold the room, create more opportunity, and make this second half of the year the moment you finally decided.